So, our general fund money is what pays for the day-to-day operations of the village. It includes maintenance, equipment salaries, insurance, etc. General fund money can also be used for other funds when there's not enough money in those funds. And for instance, we have a parks fund. Money generated from that comes from the sale of permits for day passes and season passes at the park. Sometimes we generate enough money to cover the cost in there. Sometimes the general fund has to kick in and pay for those. So the general fund can also be used for police and fire and EMS. Basically, general fund money can go to wherever it's needed. So, next fund I wanted to just hit on briefly was a special revenue fund. Those are funds that are established to account for proceeds from a specific revenue source. Other than amounts relating to major capital projects, those are legally restricted to the expenditures for that specific purpose. And to give you an idea of what those might be, we have a motor vehicle license tax that we receive from the state. The motor vehicle license tax funds street construction, maintenance, repairs, maintenance on the streets. We also have a gasoline tax that we receive from the state. We have a permissive motor vehicle tax, which is a $5 tax that some time long ago the village levied on your license plate. So all of those funds can be used for road improvements, repairs, street signs, things like that. As I mentioned the other examples, we have a park fund, we have a safety services levy, a fire and EMS levy, and left over from having our own police and mayor's court, we have some court-related funds that we're trying to clean up and move off the books.
Do you have, do we still have a maintenance special revenue fund where that tax money goes, we used to have a separate maintenance fund, do we still?
We still have, well, the money that comes in from those special revenue funds,
yes.
all go to a separate fund, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, our fire levy fund consists of property taxes and intergovernmental, that's a big word, revenues, and that can only be used for fire protection. Our safety services levy can be used for police, fire, and technically other safety related expenses, but I think most people would agree that that's going to be police and fire. I don't think we'd want to try to worm anything else into that. I do know villages and cities that do, but we need everything we have for those levies to pay for those services anyway, so we aren't going to be looking at moving any of that money. Our capital improvement funds, those are funds that are dedicated to capital equipment and construction expenditures. The majority of revenue the village has in those funds is borrowed funds for completed projects. For instance, the village has 12 separate ongoing loans for completed water projects, and we also have 5 other loans for different things in the village, like the improvement that you saw this past year to South Miami. That was an OPWC, Ohio Public Works Fund, funded project. So in addition to that, in the past, Miami Township has paid for some water line extensions, and that's handled as a capital improvement fund. So they put the money with us, we do the project, pay for it out of those funds, and if there's anything left over, we give it back to them. So I'm gonna ask for you to excuse me because I forgot to turn that off.
The waterworks pays for any loans that the village took out that are related to them, correct?
Yeah. So that's where that's a nice segue into enterprise funds. The waterworks funds are operated separately. The revenue that comes in for water and sewer is only spent on water and sewer. We collect fees for the Metropolitan Sewer District and the Whitewater Township Regional Sewer District. We get to keep 7% of the fees that we collect for them. It goes into our water and sewer operating fund. We also collect, revenue for garbage and trash recycling. That's held in a separate fund and, can only be used for that. Fiduciary agency funds are the funds that, we keep for MSD and Whitewater Township. Those are held on behalf of another governmental agency, so they're kind of a pass-through account other than the fact that we get paid for collecting those fees. So kind of a quick look at the 2022 funds, budgeted versus actual receipts. This is actually part of our audit and came from the audit information. 2022, we budgeted the general fund to receive about $600,483. We actually received $603,000 and change, so our estimate was pretty close there. Special revenue funds fell a little short. Capital project funds, we had something come up that we didn't plan on, so we had a little extra there, but it's all spent on just that particular project. Our enterprise funds, we actually were able to collect some money that we didn't collect in 2021 because a lot of people just during COVID weren't able to pay their water and sewer bills and things. That's where I expect most of that was. So, but overall, we came in about $215,000 over what we estimated for that year. In 2021, we were not doing as well, mainly because the enterprise and fiduciary funds didn't bring in the money we thought they would. But that year, we also received $176,767 in coronavirus relief funds from the American Recovery Act money. So that propped us up that year. So, and I know I'm going fast, and if anybody has questions afterwards, I'm glad to answer them, or you're welcome to call me, and we can go over it individually later on. So back to our general fund money. Remember, that's what we use for day-to-day operating expenses, including the maintenance, salaries, things like that. If we look back at where we've been, in 2016, we had expenses about $983,000, revenue of just over $1 million. As we moved on, 2021 was our year that coronavirus hit. Our expenditures were down that year. We only spent $412,000. We brought in, with that coronavirus relief fund money, just over $1 million. So that's where the bulk of our carryover money has come from. But you'll notice, starting in 2022, we started spending more than what's coming in. 2023, the estimate for this year, we're trying very hard to only spend what we bring in and not spend down that carryover money. And just as a side note, one thing that will show up at the end of the year in this fund is an additional $400,000 for the sale of the property that Cleve sold to North Bend for their William Henry Harrison tomb project. That's going to end up in the general fund because that's where money like that goes. But council and the mayor have been very adamant that they would like to set that money aside, use it to get rid of some of the blighted properties here in town and fix those up. I think that's an excellent choice on their part.
When is that gonna start?
I can't answer that for you. I just do the books.
So those of us that have to look at that have to suffer through it, right?
Well, I'm just gonna tell you that I think them setting aside that money.
Oh, I agree with you. Just
it's
don't
proper
drag your
use,
feet
so,
on it, honey.
So, I can tell you that the finance committee has looked at that. I know the mayor, the administrator talked about it. The administrators talked with me about it. No one wants to clean up the blighted properties any more than they do. So, except maybe you. How about that?
Well,
At the moment, the village finances and with the reason we're putting on a levy, we do not want to use that money, spend that money. We wanna keep it in reserves for emergencies, so that's why nothing has been done in regards to private properties yet.
I get it.
We bought a couple of them from.
Yeah, but not with that money, but at the moment, because of where the village stands financially, that money is set aside in reserves.
Well, and not only that, but what are we gonna do about the homeless people that are directly across the street? Now that all the trees are dying and stuff, they're like right there, you can see them from the road, so, I mean, are we gonna try to fix that?
We'd have to fix that through working with the sheriff and see what they can do,
The sheriff is working on the problem that currently is my understanding. They're on railroad property. We need the railroad to go to court with us. The railroad is located somewhere between Indianapolis and they have offices in Florida, and no one from the railroad is interested in moving those folks off their property. So I know that Mr. Rahal has talked with Bill Seitz about that problem. I believe he's also talked to Bill Blessing, our state senator. Mr. Seitz will not be rerunning again, so we'll have a new person to work with that. And really, unless they do something that's criminal, just sitting along the railroad track is not really a crime. They're trespassing technically, but we need the property owner to help us.
Right.
So, but anyway.
Can I also ask this, why can we not make the easement here a private drive? That way, you know, we get so much foot traffic of those homeless people coming up and down that alley all hours of the night and all hours of the day. So, you know, we're not like throwing it out there being hateful about it. We're just saying, hey, you know, we live here and we'd like to live here in peace without worrying about who these strange people are. I mean, it has gotten a little bit out of control.
So, well, I think everybody would like to see them move on someplace else. You know, the old days that you see in the movies where you gave them a bus ticket out of town doesn't work anymore, although it seems to be working for people who show up at the border. But I digress.
Well, I'm just saying if it was made into a private drive, saying no foot traffic unless you live there, that way, if they keep coming up and down that alley, then the police can step in and say, hey, you cannot do this.
I don't know what the issues may be of creating that, but I can get with Mr. Rahal, we can look into it, see what the options may be. So,
That's something for a regular council meeting,
Yeah.
I would say.
yeah.
So-
All right, I'm cool with that.
Cause there's some legal issues that we don't have an attorney here to address, so.
So getting back to our finances, which is what we're here for, you get a graph because I like to do graphs. So you can see back 2016 through 2020, we were just spending what we brought in, everything was going along fine. We had the drop in expenses in 2021, and then as we got closer to 2022, the drop in revenue with the loss of the levy. So our projection is next year, in 2024, we're gonna begin to have to spend down that carryover money. And as I look at the projections, I don't see it getting any better, so eventually we're gonna run out of money. And unfortunately, we can put stuff off, we can delay things, and but only for so long. So I'm just gonna end with, and this is something that I've said for some time. I got this from Governing Magazine. It's not something that I was smart enough to come up with on my own, but when you're looking at the financial health of a community, a local government is financially healthy if it can deliver the services its citizens expect with the resources its citizens provide now and in the future. And I think that's where council is. I think they've done a great job of being good stewards of the money and putting stuff off as long as they can. So now it's up to the people to decide what services they want and what they're willing to pay for. And, you know, as your fiscal officer, I can tell you, the money's needed. You know, you have to make that decision whether you can afford that, and, that's why you get to vote on it. So, I can tell you that council, the way it is not gonna waste that money. They'll be good stewards of it. And, I hope that you see fit to give them the money. So, that's me, so.
I got two questions. Why don't you tell us, in your best estimate, how long the village has without a levy passing?
Depends on how many things you can kick down the road.
Well, give us your best guess.
5 years at providing services the way they are right now, which is deferring maintenance, things like that. You can probably drag that out another year or two. So, you know, what's gonna happen is when things start dwindling down more and more, the village is gonna be able to do less and less. So you're not gonna see some of the things that you see now. So, you know, we're very fortunate. The beautification committee paid for the banners that you see up, and you might have noticed they just changed from spring and summer to fall and winter. Beautification committee paid for most of the flowers this year that went in the flower pots. So people are kicking in, and the volunteers are doing things. I have to give Kevin a lot of credit, because the Christmas walk has been his baby since I've been here, and it's a great service. I know the people in the community love it, but he spends very little money. I think you bought some hot chocolate and stuff to make s'mores with, is pretty much it. And everything else that happens around that, he coordinates, and so he doesn't spend a lot of money. We don't make a lot of money, but it certainly is probably one of the best community projects here in the village, in my opinion.
My second question deals with the projected revenue. That was based on old valuation, and I know you're taking a guess, but with new valuation, what do you, if you were to give your best guess, and we know the Ohio Tax Commissioner has not set those rates yet, but if you were to maybe take an educated guess, because it's gonna be more than the 700, if it passes, it'll be more than this 723, whatever you had up there. What would you say additional it might be?
I don't think that's a legitimate question to ask, because we cannot make those predictions. I know from myself, family members in the communities, what we've received as far as how much they're going up, there's a wide variance. My property is going up about 30%, or my dad's property is going up a lot more than that. So I don't think we could even make an educated guess on that question.
The other thing that people need to remember is, because your property value is going up that much, that does not mean your tax bill will go up that much, because the levies that are existing levies that were voted in at a specific time frame for a specific amount, those levies will still only bring in that amount of money for those levies. So you get the new construction and things comes in, and hopefully we'll be seeing some more new construction down at where Roy Rogers and Skyline are. Not a lot of other room in the village for new construction, but yeah.
I'd like to respond to your comment. Mine went up very much also, but I've already had to try to guesstimate what I think my additional, because that's going into escrow, and I've already somewhat figured that out, and I realize it's not an exact science, but I'll make my prediction right now. If you're looking at 723,000, you're gonna be looking close to 800,000. Is probably what you're gonna be looking at.
You can make that based on your property values and your known information, but
Yeah.
for us to estimate that for the entire village, I don't think that's possible.
Well, I'm just saying, I am looking at it from the standpoint of the entire village, because if you go on the auditor site and take a look at what the valuation is on specific properties in the village itself, you can extrapolate at least a sense of what that's going to be. You're looking at a 7-point mill levy, which I'm gonna vote for, and I'm anticipating that if this would pass, it's probably going to jack my property tax up by about $400. That's what I'm thinking about. So I'm already trying to make a decision that, okay, what's that gonna translate into an escrow payment? Because I have a mortgage still. I think every property owner is gonna have to sort of come to that grips. So I'm trying to take a look at lower valuation of homes all the way through our highest. That's my best guess. It is a guess, but I don't want people to come in with the concept that that's the figure it's gonna be. It's gonna be more than that, which is actually good for the village. I'm not complaining about that, but I do think one of the concerns I had, and I expressed this in a council meeting earlier, that you probably should have waited, gotten the valuation, figure it out, and the tax levy should have been probably postponed until next year when you know exactly what the dollar amount is. Every person in this village has a different economic situation. I can handle that increase in tax. There's gonna be people that are in the lower end where maybe their property, and I've talked to people enough in the village, there are those that have had a $25,000 increase all the way up to $110,000. And all of them are trying to figure out, if we pass this, how are we going to pay for it ourselves? And if somebody is on a fixed income or somebody is maybe unemployed, all those things are gonna factor in. And so I think from the standpoint of a village council, I still believe it would have been more prudent to wait until the first of the year or next year in May. And I do believe at that point in time, you could have probably been giving accurate information to the citizens.
Well, the
That's
amount
all-
you've got now is based on what the auditor certified for you,
Correct.
correct?
That-
And you
that's-
had a date deadline that you had to meet to
That's-
get that certified, correct?
It is, that is
Okay.
all legitimate, and I agree with everything, but as a council person, as the finance committee chair, we've been talking about this for the last 2 years since the renewal levy failed. And this has been in the works for many, many, many months. And when we did our projected levy, we had to go with the information that we had at the time. We didn't know then that property values, we know that it's a property evaluation year, but we didn't know that they were gonna be increasing as substantially as they have. We have no idea to do that. So as finance, I didn't feel that we could put it off another year. We've already gone 2 years without the income, and I felt that it was my responsibility to the community to do what we needed to do.
And I want to be clear, I think you've done a champion job.
Yes.
Okay, without any question. My only concern is waiting as long as we waited to talk to the community. The early voting has already started. This past weekend, I talked to over 25 residents in Westgate alone. Many of those had already voted. To me, it would have been, this is not something new. Probably starting in January, we should have been having community meetings discussing what the problems were before it was voted on by council.
Hindsight's 20/20, and we can always improve.
It
as
wasn't
we move
hindsight.
forward.
That was stuff that was brought up. I brought it up in early year. I still have that on tape, but it was ignored. So all I'm gonna say to you is, I understand what you tried to do, but this is really too late.
I've got 3 questions. But first, something that was talked about at the finance committee, and I think it's an interesting piece of information that people should be aware of. If there's a crisis in the community, an example, Mr. Brett gave the storm sewer that runs across a large storm sewer. actually failed when they were doing the work out on East Miami. And that was covered under the project funds. But if that were, that sewer's still there, and that's not a pretty looking sewer, it's an old stone sewer, I think it's probably 150 years old maybe, I don't know the history. But if that thing were to collapse, to repair that could easily go a couple $100,000 maybe. Our cushion, our money that we're holding back, it's gone. We're precariously close to not having any money. If anything bad happens, we're done. Is that a fair statement?
In my opinion, yes, and we have been that way for several years.
Okay, just so that people are aware of that. I mean,
We were
don't have
probably
a-
that way 8 years ago.
We don't have a big
We're a
pot
small
of
body.
money.
And that's right, my first year on council 12 years ago, Linda was our fiscal officer, our elected clerk treasurer. And that, my first year on council, we did have to make a lot of drastic cuts because we didn't have the finances to continue operating at the level we were. And we did a lot, and since then, it's like year after year, we're continuing to barely get by.
Okay, well, that was my
If I
first
could-
question.
If I
I know-
could just add one more point to that.
Go ahead.
There are funds available from the state that we could go out and borrow the money to make those repairs even after the repairs have been made. So the problem with that is, you know, we've already got all those loans out there, and you know, it's kind of nice because a couple of them have dropped off, but every time we go out and borrow money, we're just putting the village in debt further and further down the line. So we can survive that, but it comes at a cost.
All right, well, let me-
Same as if you have to repave your driveway at home.
all right, my three questions, and I know you guys aren't allowed to announce ahead of time what kind of cuts would occur if this fails. I mean, you can't volunteer that, but if I ask you, you could maybe tell me what your plan may be? That's the first question. The second question is, Mr. Brett, have you looked at, for the village residents' information, if we would be dissolved, our taxes being in the township, would they be more or less than if this levy passes? Third question, actually I have four things. You brought up the loans. I don't hear much about loans. I'd be curious to know how many loans we've got, not just for the work in the village, but I mean for the waterworks. I believe they've taken out some loans. Am I not mistaken?
I think the number was 13 current loans that the waterworks has for projects, and I believe 5 for other projects in the village that are road improvements. I think in that 5, I also included the loan for the Tahoe that was bought for the police department. It doesn't sound like much, but that was a pretty good sized payment for 5 years. That's paid off next year. The contract with the county sheriff, with communities, the communities pay for their cars. So,
The water tower, that loan's paid off?
the water tower, no, that was just the project that was just done last year.
Yes.
No, that was gonna be a long-term loan.
I'm curious about the dollar amount. We can talk about how many loans, but I think everybody would be a little surprised about how much money we owe.
Well, if it's waterworks related, I'm not too worried about this levy and the waterworks and MSD loans. I'd be more concerned about what loans are obligated under the general fund, which is where this levy's gonna go. I do know that about 12 years ago, or 8 years ago, there was only a 1 mil difference between Miami Township residents and the village of Cleves. I'm guessing that with the 6 mil that dropped off a couple years ago, that we are actually lower than Miami Township. And if we dissolve and become Miami Township, our taxes very well could go up higher Well, they will go up higher than they are now, because we don't have that 6 mil. My guess is it's fairly close, but I don't know without looking at it all. It was within 1 mil difference 8 years ago.
I gave it a cursory look on behalf of someone, and I believe you're very correct. Right now, without this levy, it's definitely less taxes than what you'd pay in the township. With this levy, it becomes very, very close. I can't tell you exactly how much, but it may be a small amount more, but it's gonna be very, very close.
Well, I believe there are residents who believe that if this levy fails, then we'll dissolve, we'll go into the township, and everything will be hunky-dory for them. They don't realize that their taxes are gonna go up if
Well,
we fail.
And look, I'm not
If we
I'm not
dissolve.
the sharpest tool in the shed by far when it comes to that kind of stuff. But you do not realize how many people I've gotten into it with, because trying to explain to them that how important it is for this to pass, you know, and they're like, oh no, our taxes are gonna go up, blah, 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 and you know, just the constant conflict.
Taxes are complicated and you gotta understand them. A lot of residents don't understand them. I do.
Yeah,
We had 6 mills 8 years ago. So there's no doubt in my mind that there's a need for this levy, because if we were functioning 8 years ago on 6 mil, I'm not too surprised that 8 or 10 years later, we're asking for 7. The hard part is that it fell off the books, so
right.
people got used to less taxes, and that's the challenge. But I believe that the village needs it, but, you know, without looking at everything and seeing if there is places that can be tweaked and cut, I'm clearly gonna support it, because, but I have pretty in-depth knowledge that other people may not have, because for 18 years I did this.
Jim, I'm gonna throw out a number here as far as the loans are concerned, because you have just recently provided that information for me. I
Yeah,
believe
I'm trying
the
to get to it.
annual cost is approximately $51,000 a year, somewhere in that ballpark, that we are obligated to pay for the roads. As far as the Miami Township, I think everybody needs to realize that Miami Township, excuse me, is losing $500,000 across all their levies. They just put on they have a levy on here right now to raise their garbage fees. Those fees will actually be higher than what we pay the monthly fees here, because it's not part of our taxes. They are looking at a new money levy for their general fund starting in 2026. And so you're correct, Linda, we're gonna wind up paying more. And the other problem that people are having spoken to as many as I have, they don't look at the small amount that Cleves pays. Our amount that we pay here in Cleves is minuscule. It's only a small part of their tax bill. And
100%.
and when I was telling people their taxes went down, no, my taxes aren't going down. I said, you need to take a look at the history on the auditor site, and you'll see where your taxes went down in Cleves. They've gone up on the other levies that have passed.
County and schools.
Yeah, and there's the other thing. In 2027, the Three Rivers School District is going to be looking at a new money levy also.
So you pretty well covered the difference between Cleves and the township cost. So the other two questions, and the last question was, is there any way you can make your presentation available to the public? So I can share it with neighbors and.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I can.
It's a
I can email
PowerPoint,
it to
right?
you.
yeah, that'd be
PowerPoint.
awesome if we could do that, I agree.
Yeah, I'm glad to make that available.
Do you need a public document request from them to do that?
Yeah.
Can you put it on a website or?
That's an idea.
Yeah. No, no. We can put it out.
So to be on Cleve's website?
Yeah, I have to convert it as PowerPoint, but I can do that. I'll convert it to a PDF, that way you can use it on anything.
Thank you.
And I'm somewhat surprised I didn't think it was that good.
Well, it's information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Some of it might be confusing to
And
the normal
that's the
resident.
key, what she just said, is it's information, and that's what we need, is the information.
I think a lot of people don't realize, and this happens in villages, townships, cities, and everybody says, oh my gosh, the waterworks has got a lot of money. Well, waterworks doesn't have a lot of money when you have projects like replacing the meters and things. But everybody sees that out there and they're going, oh, the village has got a lot of money, they have waterworks, look at all that money. Well, that can only be used for the waterworks. When you go up to Miami Township or over to Whitewater, everybody looks at the road and bridge fund. And they're like, wow, we pay for that out of road and bridge? No, not a road or bridge, or materials to do that with. It's always amazing that even people who get elected, I had a township trustee ask me a few years back, they said, I mentioned that we should be seeing an increase in our portion of what we get for the gas tax, and he said, so we can buy gas for the fire trucks with that? So, and as Linda just snickered because she's heard this stuff before, no, that's used for the roads, you can't buy stuff for the fire department out of the road and bridge fund. So I think it's important that everybody understands that, yeah, there's other money, but it's restricted in its use.
I think that's the value of showing, telling people how much we owe in loans.
Now, and unfortunately, I have that in a PowerPoint, but I don't have it with me. It's on a different computer. But I will stick that slide of what we owe in this, and so people can see. And it's something you can print out the one page and show people.
Okay, so if I ask you where, you guys, I know you can't predict everything, but where would you begin, what would you cut? If the levy fails?
We have talked, in finance committee about that, where we would start cuts. The last thing that we would cut would be, safety services. But there was a lot where we were discussing it. Maintenance department would be the most affected. We would start probably with decreased maintenance in the Cleves Community Park. That would be the first thing that would probably take the most hit with cuts. We wouldn't be mowing grass over there, we wouldn't be maintaining the park, and eventually probably have to close it. And in talking about employee salaries, our salaries right now are bare minimum, just high enough that we are able to keep employees. We only have 3 maintenance employees, so when you start talking about cuts as far as employees, staffing and salary, that's not somewhere that we can cut, but we can cut things like overtime, so plowing and salting of streets may not get done in the manner that we're used to. Rather than the employees working overtime 24/7 to do things like that, it'll have to be done during regular working hours. As far as the maintenance, the mowing of grass in the right of ways and public areas, those things would not get done. In the past, we have talked about things such as turning off the street lights. That's a big expense. Those were the main things that we had talked about, and if we eliminate the maintenance department altogether, that pretty much only leaves our safety services, which is our fire and police protection.
You have to, if you don't have a way to plow Westgate Drive when it snows, I got a problem. So I don't think cutting maintenance totally is ever an option.
But when you look at, fire and police is the biggest part of our budget.
I hear what you're saying.
That's the services
but I'm just
we
saying,
cannot
cutting
cut,
maintenance,
so
I don't think is an option.
unfortunately, that's where it would end up being cut.
If I can get, I don't think she's saying that we're gonna not plow and salt the roads.
It may not be done as quickly.
It may not be done.
Right, and I
in a timely
understood that.
manner. And I will tell you this, having owned rental property and had tenants who complained no matter what you did.
Mm. I used to get those calls.
Yeah, yeah, so I would go around to other communities and go to their side streets and take pictures. So that if someone complained and you know, tenants have a lot of rights, so they can take you to court over something like that. I would go take pictures of other communities with timestamps and dates, so that I could prove that our streets were better than, I'm not gonna name the community, but a couple. Please was never one of those.
No.
Whitewater Township was never one of those, but there are places on out
Yep.
west where they didn't get the service that we did here in Cleves and we did in Whitewater, and so, you know, you get used to that, and people need that. And again, it goes back to, you know, we're healthy if we can provide those services with the revenues that the residents provide.
I would drive through Cleves on Black Road, pull onto Route 50 to head to work, and all of a sudden it's snow covered.
Yep.
So our roads have been top notch, and our residents are used to that.
Well, and there's
They're
been
used to
a lot of talk, we put together kind of a 5-year wish list. And on that wish list, John Nuff, our service director, put together, you know, how much he'd like to spend on redoing roads. Well, we've deferred that because of the financial situation. You know, there's a couple different things that he and Mike and I have looked at, different sealers and a product that we used in Whitewater. Mike used it in Fairfield. As a matter of fact, the company that developed it was in Fairfield, called Slurry Seal. You know, it can buy you some years, give you a good surface, and all it does though is push off the eventual blacktopping. And you know, now because we've deferred that, the cost of blacktop has gone through the roof. Because when we don't produce oil and try to go more green, they forget about all the other things that are made with petroleum products like blacktop. So, you know, so we, you know.
Do we
have-
still work with JMA?
Yes.
So have we had any road project grants lately?
Well, South Miami was the last one.
So our loans are for the seed money, correct?
For the,
Seed money
yeah, or actual project money, I don't remember
for the
the
road
actual-
improvement, so
Yeah.
if we got a grant, we're just paying for our portion of seed money with a loan, correct?
Yeah.
Which is
So-
20% sometimes.
Yeah,
30%.
and the other thing we've tried to do, the county is very good at letting us piggyback on their projects because they get a
Yeah.
better price. So Mike has been working with Eric Beck to, anytime they're gonna do something in this area, if we can throw a road on, you know, he wants to do that. We were successful in Whitewater when they redid Harrison Avenue and West Road. We threw a little road on off to the side and got it all done while over there. Saved us a lot of money. And I know that he talks with Eric consistently about that. And, you know, so we're out there looking for ways to do it economically. And it's gonna be more important that we keep doing that as we move forward because the costs just keep going up.
It looks like the village is getting about 60,000 a mill now. It used to be about 52. So are we getting about, what is our millage worth now? Is it about 60,000?
I have that in my presentation.
I'm based off of the 7 mil bringing in, what you said it would bring in, 400 and something thousand, that'd be 60 a mil.
423,000 annually.
Yeah, so that's about 60 with a 7 mil levy. So for every mill, we get about 60. I'm wondering if at this point in time, if the auditors could, if you requested it, give you an estimate. I know it's too late, because we're on the ballot for 7 mil, and I don't know how the evaluation will affect it.
I've asked, they don't.
They don't have that information?
No, they don't.
And you know.
So we
You
can't
did good on
possibly
your
have it
little
if they
grant
don't.
for leaving peace.
It won't happen
Council's
until
defense.
after the election's over.
In council's defense, they
No,
they didn't know that the auditor wasn't gonna complete their reevaluation in a timely manner.
or that it would be that high.
Yeah.
But a lot of the levies that are now are not gonna go up,
No, we won't.
because they were
continue.
certified at a based rate over a 5-year time.
Correct,
So it's just this new levy that could be effective.
yes.
two levies, one is a newer one, right? The other one, we already still have one, we still have a smaller one. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay. How many mills is that?
we have a 3.9 mil general operating levy.
That's our only income.
The only income for the general fund. We have a small police pension levy, and we have a fire levy and a safety services levy. And I will tell you this, Jerry was a member of the volunteer fire department here. For what we pay Miami Township, I don't recall the exact amount this year, but it was like a little over $250,000. We couldn't run a fire department for $250,000. A new life squad, that Whitewater just recently purchased was $335,000. So, a fire truck, Little Miami Fire District just bought a new fire truck that is similar to what we have in Whitewater. $575,000. So, while I hated to see the fire department go, and I used to be a volunteer in Whitewater and worked with the people here in Cleves, one of our claims to fame is, right now they dispatch your fire services based on the closest engine house. Back then, when we were short on help, we created a dual dispatch, and they dispatched both units so that we worked together during the day. So we were one of the early people to do that. And I miss the Cleves Volunteer Fire Department. I miss the fire department I was a part of. But I don't think people are ready to go back to that. I don't think they want, to wait for somebody to get out of bed, drive from home to the firehouse, get in the life squad, and then drive back to their house, especially if they live next door to you. And I literally have done that. I'm sure Jerry has too. So, we're getting the best service we can for the dollar that we spend, but we don't have an option to go back and do it ourselves, as much as I would like to.
You couldn't get the volunteers anymore either.
When we first moved in, we had police, we had fire, it was really nice to have our own, and I feel like, we were paying. And now what we're getting for our money, I feel like is less.
What Linda just said is another key factor. You can't find volunteers anymore. People don't have time to volunteer. They don't want to volunteer.
You can't.
Seems like
That
that
was
So
a
we're
hard
getting
one.
great
Staff
service,
even.
yeah, we're getting great service from Miami Township for the fire and EMS, and it's worth the dollars we're spending, because we couldn't operate it any different. I think the challenge is the sheriff's is so new, and that's a new service that we're not getting the exact same, that we had before. But the budget was getting way more expensive than it used to be too, so,
Part of that large drop that you saw was also, we were spending close to $600,000 a year on our police department. Our police chief at the time was telling us that and this was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, he was saying, I really need $750,000 next year to run the department. We're spending much less with the sheriff, and I don't know if
How much is it with the sheriff?
Approximately 282,000, I believe.
plus
and that's cheaper than we ran a department on
that's a
10
third-
years ago.
It's a third of what we were spending.
That's one 12-hour shift.
And we do provide a car, we pay for the fuel, so, we pay for the electric for this building. We let them operate out of this building, but with the number of police officers that you see in and out of here in the presence, I think that's a cheap investment, just to have them here in the downtown village area, so.
Jim, define that for a second, because I don't know I agree with you on that. They are picking up and dropping off their cars, and then they're going out to Harrison Township, Whitewater Township, Miami Township, Crosby Township, they're not sitting in this village.
No, but they are coming here, leaving from here, coming here, doing their reports, their,
Yeah,
There's
that's not giving
more-
us any service at all.
I had to come down here and report cars that are illegally parked up on Walmsley all the time.
so, did you
And
call?
I asked them, where you guys at? Don't you patrol? They expect us to come and tell them what their job is. Is that right?
No, I don't.
I'm
Did you
paid.
call 911 and
Please?
report it?
Did you try calling them?
Did you call?
I'll call them, I'll come down, I'll talk to them in person. Yeah, they'll come up eventually, tell them to move. But it took me 2 or 3 years just to get that place marked a no parking zone. Because of the fire trucks pulling in and out.
The sheriff doesn't create the no parking zones,
So, they should.
they're not, that's not their bailiwick, they're not authorized to do that. So, if it's on Walmsley, the person you really needed to talk to would have been, our service director or our administrator, and they could have looked at that, got that started.
I don't get ahold of him, and Lynn can't get ahold of him.
You can,
I've called down here so many times, I can't never get nobody to answer the phone.
I will give you the office number.
My street hasn't been paid, I've lived here 22 years. And I'm beginning, it used to be called Walmsley Avenue, it's Walmsley Alley now because it's falling apart. And I'll drive all over this fantastic little village, and it's probably the worst road in the village.
I tell you what, if you'll, when we get done here, if I can get your name and address and phone number, I'll,
I was thinking about buying a new car, but I don't wanna ruin it, driving up down that cow path.
I believe Walmsley was one of the grants we got probably 20 years ago. One of the first streets that we did when I was the clerk.
I
But
don't-
you can only do so many of them, and Westgate's been done once in the 30-something years that we've lived here.
even the new subdivisions,
I know it's been at
Coleman
least
Woods
23
and-
years.
Yeah, you're probably right, I was here 18, I've been gone 8.
Coleman Woods and Aston,
This is-
is it Aston Woods or Aston?
SMU,
We had a meeting here one time about trying to make it a one-way street because there's so many cars parked up and down the street. It looks like an alley, not a street.
and I might add, because I've sat on Walmsley, they speed up and down that, you'd think it was the Indianapolis 500, including the trucks that are driven by Dwayne Means.
So, we'll, I will promise you that I will get either the service director or, Mr. Rahal out, we will come and we will look. Now, what I can't recall is what streets were on John's first year list of streets that he wanted to redo, but every street in the village needs it. John is our service director.
It's probably one of the worst ones in the village.
He has a list of priorities, graded from, can't remember, if it's A through D or 1 through 5. So, yeah, not that they don't wanna do it, it's just we have to be careful and we have to save the money to do it, and if it's that bad, then we need to do it.
And next door to us is a trailer and a boat storage area. And it's under new management now. But those boats and trailers that come up there, they just bump along, it's so bumpy. And it's more traffic coming and going with the new owner,
Yeah.
improving it. And they have improved the area in there, in the boat and trailer section.
Could be,
But it's more traffic on Walmsley. I don't even see how some of them big boats that come in there get up the street past all the parked cars.
if you, give me your name, address, and phone number, I will see that it gets some attention.
And sometimes they even have to have people to raise the electric lines and phone lines to get the boats coming and going up the street.
Just remember though, if it's a $500,000 project, the village 10% is low seed, anymore it's 20 or more. So you're talking a $50,000 to $100,000 loan to fix the street. And that's if the estimate is $500,000 to fix it.
Let's go around and see if we can find any worse streets.
Oh, I'm not arguing that fact, I'm just saying, that's why the money has to be there for,
Find one
even
worse
for
than
our
you guys.
seeds.
That's
And
what
if it
she
isn't,
was
it's a
saying,
loan.
to repave the street.
Can
Isn't
I
that
ask a
kinda
question?
high? Isn't it kinda high, that price, and repaving a street?
Oh, God,
No.
no.
I was about to
No.
question that, so like that little skirt that they did in Coleman Woods when they closed the project, which is basically from the entrance down to the first turn, that was $250,000 there, right? Just to resurface the top.
And that was just
So
resurfacing the
that's
top.
what,
It wasn't a total reconstruction.
20 houses worth? So,
That's
I mean,
probably
it's probably wider than Walmsley, but, I was gonna question your 500,000, I was gonna question your 20% too, I thought we were putting 50%
I think
down.
that's
It
correct.
used to be 20 or 30, I'm going by what it used to be.
Depends on what's out there in the way of loans and
Uh,
matching funds.
Okay, so it's a variable.
Yeah.
But I wanted to emphasize on this because, with Dale's question of what would be lost, if this fails. And I wanna ask if you remember the correct answer to this, but the 7 mil figure was arrived at for keeping the village at baseline level of activity, taking care of some things that have been deferred, and planning for some 5-year plan worth of activities. And my understanding is that streets were involved in that. So is that true? Is the 7 mil levy calculated on some street replacement?
7 mil, yes, the 7 mil levy was calculated on, he was talking about John's
John's
list of
priority list.
roads, those things were taken into account when we did a 5-year projected. We tried to take into account inflation, and that, all of that was taken into account, yes.
Okay, so I just want to emphasize that,
The
because I
last
think that
thing-
flew under the radar. It's like, one of the things you will lose is we will not have the money to start to address those streets for however long we don't have those funds. That means that those projects will extremely likely be deferred.
And cost more when it comes time to do them. So, and
So-
to give you an idea of, the, how hard the maintenance department, for instance, tries to make things work, they're replacing a pickup truck that was a hand-me-down from the fire department when it disbanded
2010, and we
in
had
two
it for
thousand and ten, and it was a
6
couple years old then.
There's so
And
many-
they literally have a dump truck that the wheels actually fell off of last year when they were plowing stuff. It just was that worn out, that they literally fell off. And so, and then you have to repair that. Another good example, Waterworks just lost an engine in a truck. New truck, if you could find one, was around $70,000. They paid $30,000 for a new engine to replace the poor Ford engine that was originally put in that year. But they had already bought one truck this year. They're doing the water meter project. So rather than go out and buy another new truck, they fixed the old one to get by. So there's not a lot of money being wasted here. I can attest to that. So I would have been, in great times with, extra money, we would have said, oh, only $40,000 more, we'll go buy the new truck and we'll have a new truck. Well, we're not there. Waterworks is or maintenance is replacing that truck. So, that'll be the only new truck they've had since when, Jerry? Gosh, maybe.
Can you remember when the last time maintenance bought a new truck? I don't even remember them ever buying a
It
new
might have
truck.
been-
Been longer than 8 years if you
Might
haven't bought
might have
one
been that
since I've
truck
been
that they got
gone.
from the fire department was as long as they've had.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So they put things off, they've done what they can, and, unfortunately, it's time to pay the piper, hopefully.
Any other questions?
I'd hang a comment on that, without trying to specifically take a position for the levy, but, it's not, when I arrived in 2016, we were operating under that old 6 mil levy, and that was a baseline that we were scrappy then. And then we've spent 2 years, 6 mils less than scrappy. I think that would be an accurate way to represent, our activities financially. But I would just add a note of optimism that this ragtag team that we have assembled here, can do pretty good things with, cobbling things together. So getting back to a baseline, maybe we could stop telling these stories of doom and gloom. Show that we can thrive on some startup funds.
Actually, I don't
think
think-
we've seen.
I disagree, they're not doom and gloom, they're, you know, showing some resourcefulness and what they can do and, you know, and what you can expect things to get better when we have the money. And I'm not on council, I don't get to decide that, I just pay the bills, and keep score at the meetings, so.
So
But,
I think we could just add the perspective of sometimes you need resources to thrive as well. And the community can think about that. And what did a little bit of funds coming for that playground do? People keep giving me credit for that. I didn't apply for that grant, I just got the input. Anyway, that minor injection of money, people have really celebrated what it does. So I think we start seeing some roads running around town that have been paved and saved from being alleys. That's part of the equation too. If the question is, what are you getting for your levy money? There's a positive side too, not just a what will be cut. That's the point that I think we can